Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan, and welcome to the latest edition of our entertainment show, where we look at upcoming TV, movies, and series debuting in Ireland this month. And obviously, it's the month of July. It means that with everything getting back to order in terms of the world, we're seeing new productions hit our screens this month. And one of those productions is based on the famous computer sort of horror game Resident Evil. It's called Resident Evil Infinite Darkness. It launched just yesterday on channel Netflix here in the UK and Ireland on July the 8th, and it can be seen all over the world. It's called Resident Evil Infinite Darkness. It's set after the events of Resident Evil 4, the computer game, and they're delighted to be joined by one of the stars of the TV series, Stephanie Panisello, who plays the role of Claire Redfield. And I suppose, Stephanie, first of all, Resident Evil, are you actually a fan in terms of those sort of computer games? Horror, it's sort of zombies, it's a video version of The Walking Dead in terms of going around and sort of shooting zombies. I imagine in terms of the computer game, would that be your sort of cup of tea, or are you very much the sort of on-screen TV version of it?
Well, it's funny you ask. So I'm definitely a Resident Evil fan. I started as, so I was a Resident Evil fan from the beginning. I was very much into video games growing up.
Okay.
I have 3 brothers, so that's a very normal thing in our household. And so I actually was introduced, the very first game that I was introduced to was Resident Evil 2.
Okay.
And I was blown away by the fact that you could play as a female character at the time, because that was very uncommon. So I definitely am a fan. Funny enough, Resident Evil kind of put everything on the map. So The Walking Dead was probably very inspired by Resident Evil, and kind of how Resident Evil was inspired by, the 80s kind of like zombie horror movies. So, yeah.
And I suppose this is really a first sort of a spin-off. We know the Resident Evil movies with Mila Jovovich and the sort of tension that sort of left in terms of that sort of, they never really followed up as such with a sort of a TV series. So this is the first sort of incarnation of that sort of TV series. So I suppose there's a few episodes in this series, but it probably leaves the door ajar, I would say, in terms of possibilities, because obviously the movies were so in depth. There's sort of a whole sort of landscape out there that you can play with, I imagine.
Yeah, so funny. So those particular movies that were live action were very much a spin-off off of Resident Evil. That was not characters that were canon. So they kind of created something very different. So we're actually bringing it back to the roots of Resident Evil. And this, like you said, it does take place after Resident Evil 4. And it is, very iconic characters that you're following. So you're following Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield, which is who I, reprise my role as. And it is different. It is kind of a self-contained story that can fall within that world. I know now that the show has come out, people are already asking about a season 2 and what happens and all that. I don't know if there will be one, fingers crossed, but there is a lot of things that you kind of would benefit from having played the games in the past, because you'll see little Easter eggs, but it can also just be watched and just be a self-contained story as well.
So in terms of that, do we get a beginning, a middle, and an end in terms of this sort of series?
I would say yes, because it's the first, it's a season of it. So you do get that feeling of beginning and completion, but I know that for some people it's kind of left some strings open as to what. So but you do have that feeling of like completion there. So
okay. And Stephanie, in terms of production and in terms of a cast as well, it's a tight sort of knit sort of cast in terms of So in terms of shooting, were you talking about maybe 2 months? I would imagine 2 to 3 months, was it?
Oh, how long it takes?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. As far as production itself, I mean, you kind of go back and forth, right? So we actually did full performance capture for this, which I think some people were not aware of. So it's not just the voice that I lend myself to. I also lend my full body performance and facial performance for the character of Claire Redfield, and I actually, side note, but I also did the motion capture for the Shen Mei character, though she is voiced by somebody else. Okay. So all of that did take some time, and then we went into, later on we go back in and do ADR and pick up more voice stuff and nuances. So it really is split up. There's not really, I couldn't give you a full timeline. But it does get split up between, and then as far as production goes, it takes a while to make something, to this caliber. And when you see it, you would understand why. So.
And Stephanie, in terms of the location, as far as I'm aware, filming began in Chicago in 2020. Whereabouts in Chicago did you shoot it?
It was not in Chicago, actually. Yeah, we started some things in Japan, okay, and then here in Los Angeles. So we did a fusion of the two, a bit of a mixture.
And Stephanie, in terms of auditioning for the role, how did you get cast as the role of Claire Redfield in Resident Evil?
How? So we're talking from the beginning, the origin of my version of Claire. Okay. Yeah, I would say, as any actor does, there was a breakdown that came into my agency, and I went in for the role as a normal audition. But what was funny was that because I was already a fan and understood the franchise, I was very familiar when I saw, Claire, and then the lines "Don't shoot." Because I was like, there's not many other characters that say this. I was like, that's a pair up that I know. Yeah. So I knew right away that this was Claire Redfield. And thankfully I had already done a lot of stunt training and firearms training. So it was very physical with the audition process as well.
And I suppose, Stephanie, I know, speaking to you, you're a fan and you're really excited by this debuting all over the world, and Ireland and the UK as sort of such, and being involved in the Resident Evil sort of franchise now, a growing sort of franchise that obviously leads to more computer games. Obviously, we've seen the Mortal Kombat franchise, a movie because of the demand and such a success, a movie spin-off. But is this sort of a franchise that is dear to your heart, that you want to keep in terms of progressing in terms of future roles and future opportunities within the sort of franchise of Resident Evil going forward?
Oh, Jim, absolutely. Are you kidding me? I was going to wear this hat. I got to show you. 25 years strong that this franchise has been going. Resident Evil, 25 years. It is absolutely a franchise that I'd love to be a part of, that I would love to continue to be a part of, and getting to be such an incredibly iconic character for me is a blessing. It really is. It's something that I don't see going away anytime soon. And if I am asked to take on, reprise my role again for anything, I would love to. And I've been so welcomed by the community of fans that it just feels like a giant Resident Evil family at this point. So I don't think they would be happy if I didn't.
And Stephanie, you mentioned there, I suppose, in terms of voicing and sort of stuff. And what's my understanding of voicing sometimes is, as a cast, that there's no really interaction between fellow cast members. So it's a bit of a surprise when they find out who else is appearing on that. So did you do much of the voicing together, or do you get any opportunity to do that with COVID?
Well, because we did full performance capture with motion capture, we were actually in the volume together. So we were in the same space performing. And then when we did pick up our voices after the fact for anything, that is when we were alone. So those were the moments where things were different. So because I did, some of us did motion capture for other characters as well, we didn't meet who those voices were going to be until later. Okay. So there is those situations where, like, you know, the actress that voices Shen Mei, I didn't know. So I did her motion capture and her facial capture, but I had no idea what the voice was going to be. So now, you know, hopefully after all this COVID stuff, we can finally meet in person. Also, you know, another actor, Brad, who voiced Wilson. And then the other one was Ray Charles, Ray Chase. I actually know him, but we had never worked on the project. So now I know that he's voicing Jason. So you do get, it was a mixture of both.
And I suppose, Stephanie, in terms of the final product, when you saw it for the first time, were you sort of blown away? Did you get to see it a private sort of screening before its actual release?
You know, we actually, Nick Apostolides, who plays Leon Kennedy, and I actually watched it for the very first time yesterday.
Wow.
While everybody else was watching it, we also watched it. He came over my house. We had a whole little watch party just between us because we're like, we need to keep this like a private moment to experience it and see what it's like, you know. But it was awesome. We were, you know, we always, I think as an actor, sometimes you want to purposely set your bar low, right? Because you're like, just in case, you know, I don't want to be disappointed, but we were actually very pleasantly surprised. We were blown away. It was such a beautiful feeling for us as actors, you know, and having come from Resident Evil 2 to now seeing this on Netflix, it was quite an awesome moment for us. We definitely celebrated. We have a whole little thing where we love Oreo cookies. So Oreo cookies were definitely there. And you know, brought out the champagne, but definitely enjoyed it. And we wish we would have been able to do more things. I know there was a premiere that happened in Japan, but unfortunately, due to all of the COVID stuff, we weren't able to make it there. But it would have been quite nice. But it was still awesome, and we still very much love the show and appreciated all of it.
And I suppose, Stephanie, for you, is it a busy time so far? I suppose with everything beginning to get back to normal, is there an awful lot of projects in the pipeline, or projects sort of completed in terms of TV series, movies, voiceovers that we're going to see here on our TV screens or on our movie screens here in Ireland later in 2021, or maybe possibly the start of 2022?
Well, you know, the funny thing with this business is that everything is under NDAs. Everything is secrecy. That's, I pretty much tell everybody I work for the CIA. I am an actress, but I'm also, you know, like, so there are some projects. I do have, you know, some games that I continue to be a part of. There is a VR game called Larcenauts that I finished up that's come out now. Very first VR shooter. So that's a big deal for a lot of people. Also, there's a kids show that I'm currently voicing the lead on that has not come out yet, but we should be able to see something, I believe, the beginning of next year. So that's exciting. So that'll be on television.
And Stephanie, if I can turn it over to you and maybe Claire Redfield for the last 30 seconds, and she might enlighten all our audience here in Ireland why they should go to their TV screens, hit the Netflix button and tune in for Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, and what's in store for them.
Ooh, well, if we're going to bring out Claire here. Well, considering this is Resident Evil, and okay, we'll bring it back with Claire. So everyone who is a fan, this is Claire Redfield here. If you want to watch more Resident Evil, you want to see more horror, more action, conspiracies, politics, and you want to see me in action, then you should definitely be watching Netflix right now, Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, because Leon and I are teaming up.
On that note, Stephanie Panisello, great to hear from you today, all about Resident Evil Infinite Darkness. No doubt it'll be a great success and it'll lead to future seasons, hopefully in the pipeline as well. Obviously, it's going down to rave reviews at the moment. But for the moment, Stephanie Panisello, take care, God bless, and hopefully, please God, we'll get a chance to speak to each other again in the near future in terms of other projects that you're involved with. But for the moment, Stephanie, stay safe, stay well, and keep shooting them up.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everybody for, being a fan of the franchise. And I look forward to doing more of this and doing this again.
Cheers, Stephanie. Have a nice day now.
Thank you, you too.